I'm Kevin West. Like I said, I think I've met pretty much all of you guys. I represent House District 54, which is North Moore and South Oklahoma City. And I'm very glad that I'm on the not sorely disappointing list.
There's still time.
There is still time. There's still time. But no, a lot of the things that I've seen going in, I went in. I tried to go in with a very open mind, not have any real preconceived notions, because I had never been involved at that level before. And I think that has served me pretty well, just being able to go in and kind of take it as it comes. And several of the things that I've seen, probably the biggest thing that I've learned is that it's a whole lot easier in most cases to change a bill than it is to try to kill a bill. And I wish I had known that early on. But one thing that did come up with the Senate bills coming over, there was a Senate bill, a constituent, he does the victims impact panels, and he is one certificate away from being a one-stop shop, so that he can take care of all of that stuff in one city. And it's like he said, a lot of people get into those programs and they have to go to 4 or 5 different places, and it's hard enough to get them to go to those anyway, but then you start bouncing them around, and if they miss one halfway through, they got to start over again. Well, there was some legislation coming through that would have eliminated or taken steps towards eliminating those one-stop shops. And so I got with him, we went over all the language, I got with the House author, and he got with the senator, which was A.J. Griffin, and we were able to work on that and get it changed to where it's no longer going to eliminate that competition of those one-stop shops. So, things like that, it's because when he very first contacted me, he was like, this is really bad legislation for what I do. He said, I'll survive because I'll continue doing this because that's where my heart is, but I would really like for you to just vote no on that. And I told him, I said, well, why don't we just get together and see if we can maybe change it. So that was one big thing that I've learned. Another thing that I've learned as a freshman, and with the way that I came into this with no real preconceived notions, was that I can get away with quite a bit because I am a freshman. So, all good stuff, just trying to really dig in on the budget items. Well, one thing that came up, this was a House bill that was dealing with electric and hybrid vehicles. And I already knew from whenever I was very first running that our overall tax structure needs to be completely revamped. And that's unfortunately, that's one of those things that's going to take more than 1 or 2 sessions. I mean, we would be lucky if you got to serve the full 12 years and you saw some major reform in that, just because everything is so entrenched. But one thing that really jumped out to me in talking to the Roads and Bridges people, for I believe that it's 8 years running, the money that's designated to go to Roads and Bridges from vehicle related fees has been short every year for at least 8 years now. So I got to talking to Representative Dustin Roberts, who is really into the roads and bridges and he's been one of the big proponents for the 8-year plan and trying to keep that going and improve on that. So I got with him, and we also got with some of the roads and bridges guys. And one thing that we're going to do this during the interim is we're going to do an interim study to specifically look at that area of the tax code and see if there's some things that we can do to revamp that. Because, and it makes perfect sense, because 15, 20 years ago, all of the vehicles were getting in the 20s maximum miles per gallon. So it's not really fair. At this rate, we would have to probably increase the current fees that we have, 100% or more, just to keep up. And that's not fair to anybody. So, that's one that is very, very easy to visualize and see, how even though this hybrid or this total electric car isn't using nearly as much fuel, it's still taking up space, so how can we get a fair system? And there's several states that have revamped how they fund for roads and bridges that we're going to be taking on. So those are some things when you really start getting into an area or a couple of areas, getting into these interim studies, that's where you make really big strides. And that's something that I've told a lot of people, you're not seeing a whole bunch of that in this session. And I believe one of the primary reasons was we had so much turnover, especially on the House side, from last year to this year. So you didn't have, when I'm out knocking on doors, I can't very well be involved in an interim study on something, So I think that that some of those election year off-session times, there's not a whole lot that gets done, but there's ample opportunity to get quite a bit done in the other years. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. So far, we haven't really had any of the really tough votes. We've been working on the budget. This week we discussed, I believe it was 18 different proposals that would increase revenue without raising taxes. Those would be the items that only require 51 votes, just a simple majority. Any tax increase requires 76 votes. And at this point, if we had every Republican vote in favor of it, we would still need 3 Democrats to join in. And there's, depending on what the tax is, there's anywhere from 15 to 20 Republicans that just will not vote. So, it makes it a very high hurdle to get there. The 3 big ones that I've heard the most talked about have been gross production tax on oil and gas, the motor fuel tax increase, which would be for gasoline and diesel, and then also the what was the third one?
Those were the 2 I remembered for you.
Just smiling. Thank you. Those are the ones I remember. But there are a few of those that are out there. I don't really know we haven't really started whipping any of those to see exactly where people stand. The approach that leadership is taking is that we look at all of the 51 vote things first and foremost, because that's where the majority of all of the change is going to take place this year. and then that will tell us where we're at on the balance of it, and exactly which, oh, the other one was the cigarette tax.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest issues with the cigarette tax is it's kind of a multi-tiered problem that I have with it. One, it seems to me that it's very targeted for lower income people. The other part is that last year, had it passed, it would have all went to health services. This year, the talk is that only the first year would go towards health services, and then after that, it would just go into general revenue. And then the other part that I'm not happy about is that it is cigarettes only. And there has been some discussion, either doing some combination of either lowering the amount, because right now we're talking $1.50, lowering the amount, expanding it to all tobacco products, a lot of different working parts there. So far, there hadn't been really, that I've heard of, there hadn't really been any feedback on, some kind of a compromise within that. But I'm sure as we get closer and we really get into discussing it, we'll get more talk along those lines. Well, one thing that I did see, and several, especially the freshmen who have been involved in the budget hearings that we've been having, when we were talking about these 18 different 51 vote things, the majority of them seem like, just on the surface, they seem like pretty no-brainer kind of deals, but you quickly find out that there's the groups that are absolutely convinced that no, we can't do that, for whatever reason they have some kind of a vested interest in that. So, those are some of the things that we're just going to have to work through. I know when, I guess it was a month ago, Leslie Osborne, she's the A&B chairwoman, she handed out a lot of homework, is what she called it, to especially the freshmen who were interested. And my homework assignments, and these are ones that fall in the 51 vote category. My two homework assignments were, the first one was the motor fuel, and this dates back to 1996 when certain people who provide the fuel were able to get a discount because they were collecting the sales tax on the fuel and then paying it into the state. So I forget what the percentage was that they were able to get a refund on. Well, that's still in place, even though they're not collecting or actually making that payment. So it's $4 million on gasoline per year and $2 million on diesel. When you're looking at $1 billion hole, $6 million isn't much, but if we're truly going to be conservatives and we're truly going to look in every nook and cranny, that's a place to look. My other assignment was on corporations. If you're a corporation in the state of Oklahoma, you have to file yearly, and it's just a paper return. If you don't, currently the charge is $15 for a late filing. Well, that doesn't even cover the paperwork that it takes to go through all the process. And it was originally, I think in 1963, it was a $5 fee. And In 1986 was the last time that this was changed, and it went to a whopping $15. So, regionally, I did a lot of research on this. Regionally, there's quite a bit of difference, but it's about $150 to $200 regional average. I believe California was the highest at 250. So that's something that we're looking at. It's not necessarily a revenue bringing in, but it's cost savings, and that one would be about $1 million a year. I believe that last year there were 7,000 corporations that filed late, and so if you went, what the proposal is to bring it up to $150, which would be real close to the national average and the regional average. And if that same number of corporations still filed late, then, you know, of course that would total several $1 million. But the hope is that they file on time and we see a savings, and the ones that still file late, you know, we get a little bit of revenue from that. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. There were some of those 51 vote items that are like in the 50 to 60 million range. They weren't on my list, so I don't know the details on those, but you know, there is still efficiencies to be found, no doubt. And I know from personal experience being in business, there's always efficiencies that you can find. Now, I believe even if of the 18 that we talked about, I want to say that was getting us to about somewhere between 400 and 500 million. So it's half of it. So there's still a lot of room to make those efficiencies, but then there's still a lot that we have to do. I would say probably so far the toughest vote that I've had to make was on the House Bill 1482, which was, it would have reinstated the drug-free zones around schools. And there was a lot of misinformation about that. And some of it was due to the fact that the original bill would have not only rolled back everything that 780 did, but it would have taken it even further. And several legislators got together, and it was amended to where it was only around the schools, and the felony would have been an option, not an automatic. So unfortunately, a lot of the news stories still ran with the original bill version. So there was a lot of misinformation on that one. But what I found was every person that contacted my office on that said, do not overturn my vote no on this. But when I took the time to explain to them, you know, how the language was written in the bill, or in the state question did not state that it was doing away with the drug-free zones. The Attorney General had written it in there, and then the group that was supporting 780 sued to get it removed. The Supreme Court agreed with them. So the new language just said certain drug charges would no longer be felonies. And so whenever I explained that to them, and I explained to them that the amended version only made it an option, because that was one thing that I did hear. There were some people who were concerned, you know, oh my gosh, you can get busted 99 times for possession, and you get busted on the 100th time, and it's still just a misdemeanor. You know, so that would have given the prosecutors a tool That one passed the House, but it failed over, or didn't even get a hearing on the Senate side. So, for all intents and purposes, that one is dead for this year. But like I said, I felt that it was my job, since I am privy to some of this information, to make sure that when people reach out to my office, that I do my due diligence and dig into the issue and explain it to them so that they can make an informed decision. And every person, except for one that I had that conversation with, agreed with moving it on in the process. The one who didn't agree was wanting to legalize marijuana.
Completely.
I stopped reading the email after that first sentence that said legalize marijuana, and it's like, we're probably never gonna completely agree on this subject, so. But, so those are some of the things that have been happening. It's been kind of a strange mix of being very excited, because with all the freshmen, you've got a lot of brand new ideas coming into the building. You've got a lot of people who are very knowledgeable in many different areas. There's also been the little bit of disappointment, because you can't, even though you go in like myself with no real preconceived notion, you still have that idea that I'm going to be the one that changes the world, you know, and it is a humongous ship that does not turn very fast at all. So, you know, it truly is a long haul. But overall, I've been very impressed with leadership. The freshmen meet with the speaker every week, and we at the very least, we get an opportunity to voice our opinions on what we need to be looking at. If we have questions, he answers our questions. And, you know, he's been very consistent on that. That started all the way back when we did our Republican retreat back in December. And, you know, his approach is that we're duly elected just like everybody else up there. You know, whether this is our first session or our 11th session. So that part I've been very encouraged about. I guess one thing that it has been a while since I spoke to you guys. I am the vice chairman of the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee is the committee that dealt with the investigation into the speaker making the legal settlement, the Ford killer and Dan Kirby issue. And when that assignment first came out, you know, I was like, oh boy. But I took the approach that gave me an opportunity to really spend some time with some of the senior members, because typically speaking, the Rules Committee is made up mostly of leadership. And so I told Goldie whenever that assignment came through, you know, I said, well, somebody's got to be looking into this, and it might as well be me. At least I'll know exactly what's going on. Again, there was a lot of misinformation being thrown around. The dynamics of elected officials and employed people and their interaction gave us no choice but to have the confidentiality agreement so that we could have meetings, because this was probably the biggest misconception, was we were not investigating to see if sexual harassment had occurred. We were looking at the conduct of the members when it came to Dan Kirby and Representative Ford Taylor. So in order to be able to get the other people involved in those cases to come in and speak to us, we really had no choice but to do the confidentiality. Once they came and spoke to us, they walked out of that room, they could tell whatever they wanted to, just like the former LA for Dan Kirby did. You know, I mean, almost word for word what she told us in the closed door meeting was on the front page of the Daily Oklahoma. So I personally was incredibly proud of the commitment that we had from leadership on that we were going to release everything that we could, and we absolutely positively did. The only documents that were not released were ones that the person who provided them did not give us the permission to release them. That was, and there weren't very many of those. What we did find was, like on the speaker making the payment, that was absolutely legal. It's in the Constitution, it's in the House rules. The Speaker of the House is basically, he's the CEO of the House of Representatives, which is a company for all intents and purposes. So when this case came up, he consulted with the legal staff and some outside legal staff, and that was in the best interest, because if they went to court, even if they won, you're still paying court fees. We were more than satisfied that was very legal for him to do that, but we also heard the people on that, and we said we have to take this further, not just to let the people know that we're doing our due diligence, but to have more transparency and to protect future speakers. So we came up with the suggestions that the speaker create a committee that any expenditure over, I believe we said 15,000, and I think that the final decision was any expenditure of 12,000 would go through this committee, and it's made up of sitting representatives. So, you know, if something like this were to come up again, he would have to go through this committee. And we had discussed, you know, pretty much any expenditures, but then when you start thinking about it from the aspect that he's the CEO, he's overseeing payroll payments, he's overseeing furniture, IT, programs, you know, 10 reps need new computers. You know, it's real easy to real quick, you know, just in day-to-day things, get to a pretty large amount. So, but I was very, very pleased with the way that all went. I was incredibly happy that Representative Kirby decided to resign so that we didn't have to make that vote on the floor. But you know, just the professionalism in that committee. We did have one Democrat that crossed over, and it was a freshman. Kind of the way that committee worked, it was originally, all of the committees are percentage-wise reflective of the representation on the House floor. So it was originally going to be I believe a 6-2 committee, 6 Republicans, 2 Democrats. When this was first announced, the Democrats requested that it be a 50-50 committee, and leadership was like,
That's right.
but we did concede, we gave them one additional member, and Leader Inman requested that he select the members of the Democrat Party. And we allowed him to do that, and then of course, you know, they making a scene and having press conferences pretty much every time that we had a meeting. But the one Democrat, she's from the Tulsa area, Melody Blanchett. She was out of town when we started meeting, so I think she missed the first 2 or 3 meetings, and then she was there the whole time, and she was very vital member of the committee. So, you know, I was real glad that we had that.